ご案内申し上げます。まもなく次のセッション、ネットワーク効果を社会変革につなげるを開始いたします。どうぞ皆様お席にお戻りください。Hi everyone, we will begin the next session shortly. Harnessing network effects for social change. Please come back to your seat. The next session will be started very shortly. Please come back to the stage. Thank you. Hi everyone, we will now begin the next session. Harnessing network effects for social change. Our next speaker is Breen Sullivan, founder and CEO of The Force Effect. Please welcome our speaker.
Well, thank you very much, everyone, especially Fumiha. Thank you, there you are. Huge thank you. Everyone at InnovateHER, Prospera Women, and all of the organizers and the sponsors who made this summit possible, and of course for including me to share some insights on behalf of the Fourth Effect. Truly, it is an honor and a privilege to be here today. Okay, so I want to start this with a quick show of hands. I know we're kind of a small crowd, but people are trickling in. So how many of you, at some point in your career, ended up with an incredible opportunity, not because of a job posting or some sort of planned meeting, but because you randomly met someone? Okay, I'm seeing some hands. I see more hands. Okay, so that moment, that serendipity, it probably felt like luck. But what if it wasn't? What if it isn't? What if those moments are actually part of a network effect at work? So one tiny ripple that can become a wave. So we've all had those experiences. Maybe you're waiting online for coffee and it's just a conversation that turns into a partnership. Maybe it's a random introduction that changes your career. Sometimes a LinkedIn message might open a door unexpectedly. Those moments feel like luck, but what they really are is the human network effect in action. They're actually living proof that every time we connect authentically, we shift what is possible for ourselves and for everyone in our orbit. The thing is, ecosystems are all around us. Our workplaces, the cities we live in, Tokyo, New York, the communities that we're a part of, InnovateHER, even our global economy. Everything is, in fact, a series of interconnected ecosystems. And the thing is that ecosystems have a golden rule. Everything is connected, and everything is always changing. So that means when change happens in one part of the ecosystem, it can reverberate in unexpected ways. And in the aggregate, those changes can actually become transformative. So when you think about it, every ecosystem is alive. It's breathing, it's evolving, just like every one of us here in this room. So when something shifts, a new technology, a new policy, a new idea, the effects ripple everywhere. And there are big changes around us, all around us, in 2025. In fact, Many of the things that we used to treat as constants, the structures, the truths, even the laws that defined how businesses, leadership, or frankly, even reality itself works, they're suddenly up for grabs. The sand, right now in 2025, is shifting beneath our feet. And that is exhilarating because so much is possible, but it is also destabilizing because every breakthrough, it brings new risks, and it brings new dependencies, new questions of trust and alignment, which is why the biggest challenges that we face and that we're facing here in 2025, they aren't technological, they're human. And the irony here is that technology is in fact moving faster than trust. It's faster than governance, and it's faster than our ability to even understand what it means to lead in this new world. So the moment is thrilling, but it also can feel a little bit like we're trying to surf a tidal wave while simultaneously building the surfboard that is underneath us. And that's at the center of what I want to talk about today, because harnessing network effects for social change has always been how real impact happens. And the mission driving everything we do at the Fourth Effect is a perfect example of this. Okay, so a little bit about me. When I served as a general counsel to high-growth US startups, I kept seeing the same problem. The vast majority of private companies simply weren't thinking strategically about advisory or governing boards, or if they did, they often didn't have the right people in the right seats at the right time. Now, this is where my co-founder, who is up on this stage, and in fact, sitting in the front row right over there, but not up on this stage speaking, Kat DeHaan, this is where she comes in. Because as a founder whose company was scaling globally, she learned firsthand how much harder it can be when your governance and your networks aren't built for the next stage. So we joined forces, and we launched the Fourth Effect, a bidirectional intelligent platform that can educate startups and executives on how advisory and governing boards actually work, matches the right people to the right companies at the right moment, and makes equity, access, leadership opportunity, and board service transparent and scalable. We did this not because it was easy, but because we didn't want to sit around and wait for someone to fix the pipeline, or said another way, to fix women. We wanted to fix the system, because the truth is, the system that we've inherited here in 2025, it wasn't built for the kind of founders and leaders who are in fact driving today's innovation economy. It wasn't built for women balancing ambition and caregiving. It wasn't built for diverse founders navigating bias in every investor meeting. So we wanted to create something that didn't just make the system better, but made it fair. And that's why the Fourth Effect was born. Okay, this brings me to the heart of today's message. So private sector companies aren't just the backbone of global economies. They can, in fact, be the key drivers of the systemic change that we all need. Now, I know this is a very US-centric example, but follow me on this. So 99% of companies in the United States are private. That's 88% of our workforce, and that's 85% of our GDP. And yet these companies, they are almost always excluded from critical conversations around boards, leadership, and equity ownership, even though these very companies are the ones that are shaping our future. So I want to just visualize that for a second. So if everyone in this room represented the United States economy, 99% of everyone in this room would be part of the private sector. So that is almost everyone. Now, imagine if nearly all of that talent and all of that capital were just left out of the governance and ownership conversations, because that is what is happening. That is what's happening in the US, and that's what's happening in many countries. When those systems are closed off, innovation shrinks, opportunity shrinks, wealth shrinks, and the pie itself gets smaller. And this is why we have to flip the script. We need to turn boards and networks into engines of access, because the advisory and governing boards of private companies, they're underutilized and they're underleveraged, and it's really holding all of us back. Companies are missing out on profitability, innovation, market capture, and executives are missing out on earning equity, advancing professionally, and building wealth. And we are all missing out on the full value of innovation. When we help startups build fit-for-purpose boards, we are not just strengthening individual companies. We're actually reshaping the future of leadership and ownership. By opening up opportunities to underrepresented founders and leaders, we're ensuring that the solutions that are created, whether it's climate tech, health equity, future of work, any vertical, that they are more equitable, that they're more inclusive, and they're more sustainable. And that really is a win for everyone. That is the pie getting bigger. Okay, now here's the ugly truth. About 90% of startups fail. And this isn't just about lack of capital. Many startups fail because of the lack of strategic advice at the right time. It's in fact a chain of gaps. It's not any one thing. Founders don't know. They don't know that a board could help them. They don't necessarily know what a board is, or the difference between an advisory board and a governing board. They don't know what skills they need. They don't know where to find the right people, and they don't have a system to make the relationships work. Behind all of this is a deeper problem. It's the invisible architecture of the private sector. It's cap tables, advisory boards, governing boards that are deeply inefficient, that are inequitable, and overall that are outdated. And it's holding back companies, and it's holding back people. So when you miss one part of that chain, you leave just a whole lot of value on the table. And the bigger your ambition, whether it's scaling globally, it's raising capital, expanding across borders, the more exposed you are. The bottom line, startups that do have boards perform better. They survive, they grow, they don't fail, and that means more pie for all of us. Now, we have seen firsthand how small interventions like placing the right advisor or building a strong board can create these ripple effects. One founder has told us it was the most impactful community she'd ever joined. We have many examples. And we are, in fact, in a startup boom. Thanks to advances in technology, the barrier to entry is getting lower and lower. And thanks to the arrival of intelligent systems, solutions, and I think we heard this earlier on the stage from one of the panelists, the AI panel, solutions that used to take weeks or months of human coordination can now be delivered instantly and inexpensively. And so what that means is that more startups can solve more problems. And that means more innovation, or said another way, more pie for all of us. However, we will leave a lot of that pie on the table if we let things stay the way they are. If we don't harness the power of network effects for social change, especially given the incredible potential of this particular moment in 2025. Because at this moment, if we leave things alone and we don't change anything, the US market, even if we're just talking about the United States again, continues to lose out on trillions and trillions annually by not adequately investing in women and BIPOC VCs and founders, so people that need the money, people that manage the money. McKinsey estimates we're missing out on $28 trillion in global GDP because of lack of gender parity. And then, of course, this slide, according to McKinsey, companies that are in the top quartile for gender diversity, 21% more likely to outperform on profitability, 27% more likely to have superior value creation, whereas conversely, companies in the bottom quartile for diversity, 29% less likely to achieve above average profitability. Diversity pays. Now, why does this matter? Because behind every data point is a decision. It's a company that chose to value difference, a leader who chose to open a door, because diversity is not static, it really is a strategy, and if we only treat it as a checkbox, we miss its real power. And that is the power to see around corners, to anticipate change, to lead markets instead of just follow them. And I know there were some critiques of this McKinsey study, the methodology. However, other research reinforces this same truth. And that's why you see Harvard Business Review here, you see BCG here, because the bottom line is companies that can tap into that diverse network, they're 45% more likely to capture new markets, and they're 70% more likely to expand the ones that they're already in. Diversity in leadership is good for business, and it's essential for innovation. And yet these statistics remain true in the United States. And there is a similar set of stats that I could show for Japan and for every other country that's represented by the people sitting in this room today. So clearly, private sector companies are not taking McKinsey and Harvard Business Review and Boston Consulting Group. They're not taking that advice. Okay, there's one more thing I want to share before I leave this part of the conversation. And this slide is summarizing a recent first-of-its-kind set of studies that were done by Kellogg, Crunchbase, and Him4Her. Now, again, this is US-centric. It was focused on private sector boards. Now, these were all companies that raised significant venture capital dollars, also companies that self-elected to participate in this study. So probably this is as good as it gets when it comes to diversity. And there's a couple of things I want to mention here because it's really relevant. In 2019, which is when they first took this look into the private sector, which before this moment, totally opaque in the United States, 60% of the boards that they looked at, and these are big companies that have raised many tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, 60% of that sample had 0 women, and those same companies had 0 independent directors. And this is really the connection I want you to draw, because fine, lack of diversity, okay, but also lack of board strategy, lack of fit for purpose, lack of independence at all. And that correlated directly with the lack of women. Today, so 3 years in, after these studies have happened, 80% of those startups have independent directors, and the percentage of 0 women boards dropped from 60% to 32%. That is progress, and it's proof of a couple of things. One, it's proof that when you shine a light into something that has had no light shone down upon it at all, that helps. Sunlight is a disinfectant. Also, the other thing that it proves is that when startups understand the value of boards, because why did these startups start all of a sudden bringing independent directors to their boards? It's because the VCs told them to do it. And the reason why the VCs told them to do it is because those startups would make more money if they had independence. So the startups did it. And this was basic. These are the startups that are funded, that are listening to VCs, that have the ear of VCs, that are being told, you have no independent directors, you are not going to make as much money, go get an independent director. And some VCs take that a step further and say, go get a diverse independent director. But anyway, my point is that when the founders understand the value of these boards, whether it's a direct corollary to getting more money, or whether it's just a baby startup that now won't die, but might survive and might hit a KPI, then everything changes. Then those startups will create those seats. And then because of the network effect at scale, that is where we have systemic change. So our private sector doesn't have to be the way it's been. It can change. Okay, so a quick word about Japan, where we are. One of the most educated female workforces in the world, and one of the lowest rates of board participation. Women account for only about 11.4% of board members in companies, listed public companies on the Tokyo Stock Exchange prime market. Female managers hover around 10.9%, despite women comprising nearly half the university-educated workforce. But Japan is making huge efforts to address this imbalance. Everything from the government's 30% goal for female representation on boards to summits like this one that brings everyone together. And so what's so exciting about being in this room in Tokyo today, in Japan, is that we are standing at the intersection of tradition and transformation. Japan's commitment to excellence and education is extraordinary. And when that same commitment is directed toward inclusion and board diversity, the ripple effects won't just reach this country, they will influence global markets, because when Japan moves, the world notices. And as we all know, this is not a pipeline problem, it's a network problem. And Japan is not alone in that network problem. So the landscape that we face is this: massive potential and under-leveraged talent, and systems that were built for yesterday's problems and not tomorrow's solutions. So what do we do about that? And this is where I want to bring this big conversation back to the people in this room right now today. Back to the entrepreneurial ecosystem that's alive, in fact, right here in this room right now today. So many people that are at this conference, whether they're sitting in my audience or not, they're founders. And they might be, I've met a bunch of founders so far, just walking around today. They're building their network of advisors, informal and formal. A lot of these founders are looking for strategic capital, or maybe an independent director, because maybe they're getting that memo. Many of you in this audience today might be investors. You might be interested in taking one of those seats, or writing one of those checks, or inviting an advisor here to join a portfolio company's board. Many of you are executives and industry leaders with so much value to bring to scaling startups here in Japan or in other countries. So guess what? We don't have to wait. We don't have to wait for governments or investors to fix this, because we can start right here today, thanks to InnovateHER, thanks to summits like this. So for the rest of this summit, every time that you mentor a founder, every time that you have the chance, share a contact, or serve on an advisory board that comes out of someone you met here, you are literally shaping the future architecture of the private sector. This room is an ecosystem in and of itself. The energy, the experience, the generosity here, this is where the next wave begins, with organizations like InnovateHER, with Flurnery. So let's make it tangible. Let's create the network effect in this room, because systems change actually really isn't abstract. It's relational and it's intentional. So I say we make the summit more than an event. Let's make it a launch pad. OK, so turn to the person to your left, and if you have a bunch of empty seats, go just find somebody, preferably someone that you haven't met yet, and share that story that I asked you at the beginning. So tell them about that unexpected connection that you made in the past that had a ripple effect on your life. And then turn to the right, find another person, and introduce that person who you just learned about, and you just shared your moment, they shared their moment with you. Now go find another person and introduce that person to them. This is something you can repeat over and over throughout the next 36 hours of this summit. And that is part of this future that we're building, one connection at a time. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the inspiring session. 以上をもちまして、ネットワーク効果を社会変革につなげるを終了いたします。 登壇者はステージ右側のネットワーキングエリアにおりますので、どうぞ皆様もご参加ください。This concludes the session in Harnessing Network Effects for Social Change. The speaker will now move to the networking area on the right side of the stage, and we invite all of you to join them there. この後メインステージでは準備が整い次第、本日最後のセッション、AI ガバナンスの新潮流、国際市場における戦略、リスク、倫理の最前線を開催いたします。どうぞ皆様、お時間までにご着席くださいますようお願いいたします。Next, on the main stage at 5 p.m., we will begin the final session for today, the new frontier of AI governance, strategy, risk, and ethics in global markets. So please take your seats before the session begins. Thank you.